Audience knows that I will never force you to sit through me summarizing your biography or your book because I'll get both wrong and it will just be awkward for all of us. So, Matt, since your name is first on here, I'm going to start with you. If you would give esteemed audience an overview of your background, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I've lived all over the U.S. at this point now. I'm currently in Boise, Idaho, and I'm loving it. But my first book that kind of was a little bigger came out on a publisher called Oni Press. It's called Unplugged and Unpopular. It's a middle grade book that I made with Tintin Bentoa. I also did a book called Martian Ghost Centaur. That's with Steph Mitted, also for a publisher called Oni Press. When I was growing up, I did really bad in school. I'm dyslexic and just really struggled with reading in general, but somehow found comics and I love them. And then I'm really excited about Lumberjackula.
And Sam, what's an overview of your background?
So yeah, my background is I grew up reading comics as a kid, but at some point, I read and I drew comics and cartoons all through middle and high school. But at some point, when I was thinking about, where I wanted to go to school for college, I had kind of didn't really consider art as a career path until after I'd graduated and really started seriously pursuing illustration and comics within the last 5 years or so. And that's when I started, sharing my art online and met Matt through, mutual followers, people in the comic sphere. So Lumberjackula is kind of my first big comics project.
What changed for you that you went from being a fan of comics to thinking, oh, maybe I could do this?
Yeah, like I said, I grew up really enjoying comics, and I had friends where we'd collaborate on ideas for comics, and we draw our own stuff on lined notebook paper. But the professional side of it never really drew me. I was never really interested in pursuing an art degree or, trying to professionalize it in any way. So I kind of went the other direction and did the writing side. I majored in English, and then I got a master's degree in professional writing. And then after that, considering my background in cartoons, on the more hobby side of it, and then thinking about how I have some experience with writing and I have a degree in writing, why not just combine the two and, pursue comics, which, combine writing and illustration in lots of interesting ways. So I'm really interested in figuring out how to merge those two interests, those two skills that I have.
Gotcha. And as you continue to write books, come back and we'll.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
And Matt, when did you decide comic book writing is the path that was best for you, or have you decided that?
I've decided it for sure. That's definitely what I want to be doing. I used to always make comics, same as Sam. I had buddies that I was making comics with. I was drawing a lot too. I love drawing, but I am no Sam. But I was always making them, and then around high school, middle school, I found a guitar. I was like, I'm gonna do this. This is definitely my new creative outlet. And I was in punk and hardcore bands, and I treated it really seriously. We would go on tours, and we were really that was my thing. During that time, I was making zines and doing things that were comic adjacent. And I literally said oh, I can make comics when I'm old, but there isn't old people who really are in bands, who really get bands going. And then I hit a point where I was in band after band where I wasn't feeling it anymore. It wasn't the same. I kind of had a magical group that I played with when I was in high school that were my good friends. And we really, one of them went on to be a very successful musician. And the other one is still an incredible musician, but there was something special there in this collaboration that I loved. that I wasn't getting in these other bands. It wasn't the same thing. So I just kind of took a step back from it and really started focusing on comics. And then it was about like maybe 10 years before I had anything published. It was a bit of time to really get the ball going. As I think you hear more often than not from people that are just writing in comics, there's a long crawl up to get to where people are willing to read your work, because it's like, hey, read my script that has no pictures. This is not the finished product. So it takes a little bit of time to get that people willing to read it. And thankfully now people sometimes read it.
Well, for 10 years, were you getting, I mean, somebody must have read it somewhere and said, hey, Matt, this is pretty good. I mean, I assume at least before they agreed to publish Lumberjackula, somebody said, yeah, you're all right.
Yeah, I had a weird like early so Kickstarter, when Kickstarter first started, my brother told me about it, and I was maybe one of the first comics on Kickstarter. Maybe there was like 2 before, and I got this self-published, I was going to do a 12-issue miniseries, like this huge thing, and I realized I wasn't ready yet, but I got it funded like really quickly without any fan base because of the novelty of it. And oh, there's a comic on here, and people just funded it without me really having any, like, I hadn't started or built up anything. So I had that. I did have I published with a small press that's notoriously now very not loved in comics. And I had done some stuff with them, but then there was Oni Press had this thing, an open submission, pretty much like a contest, I guess, because they normally would not take in pitches from unagented people. And during that I got in, and I would consider that my first little break through that door. But during that time, I'm making comics. I'm still doing it, but I'm also bartending, and that was my thing.
And you're an artist as well, then?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, I love to draw. I'm certainly, like, my sequential skills are nowhere near Sam's. My big dream one day is to do like a heavily illustrated middle grade prose book when I have the time. But I think a comic the length of Lumberjackula, I don't think I'd be able to handle it. I don't think people would want to read it.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, as you guys are talking, and I'm learning that you have a little bit of overlap in skills, that maybe next time Sam writes the book and you draw.
yeah.
It might be great if Sam writes it. It will not be great if I draw it.
You can switch back and forth, and only the really detail obsessed people will be able to tell who's drawing which panels. I have an artist friend who likes to watch the hand-drawn Disney films and tell me when they're switching animators. Like, oh, this is a slightly different person. Like, you can tell, really. All right. This looks like the Lion King still to me, but okay.